Tell me a little bit about how you got to Baylor and what you thought when you first got here.
Two ways I got to Baylor. Number one, my pastor, Dr. Alistair Walker, went to Baylor, and he was my pastor at First Baptist Spartanburg in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Secondarily, in January of 1982, I went to the Holy Land, and I met a student at Baylor, and I had never in my life heard anyone talk about their school the way she talked about hers. It was the enthusiasm she had. I don't even know if I ever saw her when I got to campus, so it wasn't for that reason. It was just the enthusiasm that she had. So I got my dad to come out to Waco with me from South Carolina. We looked at it, and I just decided it was a place for me.
How were your campus experiences impacted by the things you did while you were here and the times that you were living in?
Well, it wasn't a pedestrian. It was not a pedestrian campus back then, so I could ride my little scooter around. I was thinking on the car ride down from Dallas. My memories go more towards people than places, but in some respects they're integrated. The intramural fields, and this will disappoint every professor I ever had, but the intramural fields, it was just a gathering place for people who love sports but weren't quite good enough to play for Baylor. And the memories I have of Gary Jones and Kevin Gillen and Doug Worrell, fraternity brothers, and intramurals, Vitex, which may or may not still be around, riding my moped to Vitex every single day. And then the house that my fraternity brothers had right down the road in Collins, which has since been condemned and should have been condemned at the time. Just the gathering places, the places that we would get together with friends, some of them fraternity brothers, some of them not. But that's my most distinctive memory of those 4 years, just the people.
Who are the teachers that had a real influence on you?
Tommy Lou Davis was my Latin teacher, and I'd never had a teacher that pretty before in my life, so I don't remember how I did in Latin, probably not terribly well, but she was so welcoming, and because I didn't know anybody at Baylor, literally not a soul when I got here, it was nice to have a welcoming teacher, even though the discipline was over my head. I was a history major, Professor Reed, Professor Vardaman. I had former President Sloan for Old Testament, and I will forever be grateful for the passing grade that he gave me. Even though it was Old Testament, he showed remarkable New Testament grace in passing me. I never had Professor Packard, but he was the sponsor of our fraternity, so obviously I loved him. But the history professor, I took a ton of psychology classes. And I really didn't have a bad experience with any of the professors, but Tommy Lou Davis because of her kindness, Vardaman because he challenged me, Reed because he was so expertise in the subject matter, and then Dr. Sloan kind of made the Old Testament come alive in a way that I'd never had before.
What is or was your favorite place on campus?
I would say the library, but I'm afraid you put me on a polygraph. I've since learned we had one. I would have liked to have visited more when I was here. Probably the building we're in right now, because every Monday night we had fraternity meeting. So it's just a place that one day out of the week where you're going to bump into people. When you're a liberal arts major, not a business major, at least back then at Baylor, you weren't going to run into many of your friends because they were all finance or economics majors. So Mondays in the Student Union building, intramural fields, Penland, obviously, when you're a freshman. Met Doug Worrell playing a game called Gallagher. This is way back before everything was on your phone, literally a machine. It's just weird that you would meet somebody that you're still friends with to this day. I can take you to the spot where I met him. I can take you to the spot where Ben Young walked up to me outside of Penland. He was the first person to befriend me when I got to Baylor, and still a friend to this moment.
maybe you've just answered the question, but what's your fondest memory of Baylor?
Number one would probably be checking my final grades my last semester and seeing that I qualified to graduate. That would probably be my fondest memory. There are a million. I mean, literally. Even just driving through campus. 30 years is a long time in some regards, but I can literally take you to the spot where I met certain people who are still in my life. People that I didn't know the day I got to Baylor, but will wind up being pallbearers whenever that day comes. So, fondest memory would be something involving Kevin Gilliland or Robert Thornton. Kevin is a clinical psychologist in Dallas, Texas now. Robert's a home builder in Bernie. And it would be social and not academic, which I'm not proud of, but I figure you want me to tell the truth.
Tell me a little bit about the religious atmosphere on campus when you were here.
Well, I'll tell you what I tell people to this day. If you are inclined to do things in college, you can probably do them at any college. It just wasn't cool to do it at Baylor. If you want to engage in illicit activity, I suspect you can anywhere, from Bob Jones to Wheaton to Baylor. It just wasn't cool. And that's what I tell my own kids. Sunday mornings, seeing the number of kids that were dressed for church in the cafeteria afterwards is just a different experience. Having a curfew, which I don't know if they still have it or not, and it wasn't strictly enforced back then, but just the notion that, great things don't happen after midnight or 11 o'clock if you're a freshman. It was, whether it was Kyle Hughes and Jimmy Seibert and Ben Young hearing the call of going into the ministry, it was embracing your Christian faith was not only okay at Baylor, it was actually celebrated. And that's different from most.
Tell me how your experience at Baylor has helped you on your professional journey, both as a prosecutor and now as a congressman in Washington.
Well, I spent my entire freshman year in Ben Young's room. Ben is now a PhD. His father's a pastor in Houston, Texas, at Second Baptist. And I would stay up until all hours of the day and night debating. We would watch Ted Koppel on Nightline on ABC, and then Ben and I would debate until he just got tired of beating me debating. Honestly, interacting with my very bright friends forces you to think quickly. I didn't go to law school at Baylor, so I didn't learn the law, but I did learn critical reasoning, and I did learn how to think quickly and be able to defend your arguments. And I give a bunch of preachers credit for that, as painful as it is for me to say that. Ben Young, Seibert, a roommate named David Cotton, who's a lawyer now, Gilliland, who's a clinical psychologist, Sam Adams. These are also all fraternity brothers, and most of them are pledge brothers. I was just really, really lucky to be around people that made you know what you believed and be able to defend it and do it quickly.
What's the best piece of advice you ever gotten? Who did you get it from? Don't listen to the radio while you're taking a bath was a pretty good piece of advice I got from my father back when you had plug-in radios. I'd say the best piece of advice I got, politically speaking, was from a guy named David Wilkins, who was the ambassador to the United States, ambassador to Canada from the United States under President George W. Bush, and that is, it is better to be a good guy or gal with a bad idea than a bad guy or gal with a good idea. And that's a really simple way of saying it pays to be nice. If you are nice and treat people fairly and that is your reputation, then they'll cut your break if you don't have the greatest idea in the world. But you can be Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein combined. And if people don't like you, or you don't present yourself in a likable way, you're not going to be very successful. How's your life been different than you expected? Well, I didn't expect to be back at Baylor getting anything other than a revocation of my degree, so that's different. I never saw myself in Congress. I never saw myself running for office. None of my friends ever saw me doing any of that either. I knew I'd be in the criminal justice system, but I wasn't sure which side of the criminal justice system I would be on. When you're 17, which is how old I was when I set foot on campus, and then 21 when I left, I almost wish you could go back and go to college when you're older and you know more. I couldn't have predicted any of this. From the person I married, if you had told me that I'd been able to marry someone like that, I would have had you committed. I have so far exceeded every expectation I ever had for myself.
But that said, do you have any regrets?
I have a million regrets. I focused on the social in my answers to you because I had to. If I could do it all over again, I would have studied more. I would have learned more. And it's funny how those two go hand in hand. This is the season for learning, is what I tell my own children and tell their friends. You don't have a mortgage, you don't have a job, or not a full-time job. This is the time to learn. And there's going to come a point in your life where you wish you had read The Scarlet Letter. You wish you had read The Birthmark. You wish you had read The Gates of Fire or The Man Upside Down, which Vardaman assigned to us. This is the time to read it. If you skip through it now, and then life gets fast and it gets more complicated, you can still learn, and you ought to learn the rest of your life. But that's really your only job in college, is to learn. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have taken that time. You can still have plenty of fun and learn. I would have prioritized a lot differently if I had to do it all over again.
How do you want to be remembered?
A fair person, loyal to his friends, did the best he could with the limited skill set that he had. But I like the word fair. I like justice. I like the concept of treating people fairly, of a level playing field. And I think maybe not in politics because it's so divisive, but certainly my other job as a state and federal prosecutor, I think almost everyone would tell you. I showed my daughter last night a picture of a guy that I prosecuted in a death penalty case. He represented himself. And he's on death row, but if you were to go visit him on death row, I think he would say, yeah, he beat me, but he was fair. God is just, and he wants us to treat other people justly.
What did Baylor mean to you?
4 of the most formative years of my life, it proved to me that I could. Young people this age don't have any concept, I don't think, of how disconnected you would be being dropped off outside of Penland. I can still see my father's pickup truck pulling away. I did not know the soul. There was no texting, there was no emailing, there were no cell phones. I didn't know anybody. And that still rings as probably the loneliest moment of my life. Just, I am 1,000 miles away. I don't know anybody. I'm on my own. And that loneliness lasted about 45 minutes until I met a guy named Ben Young. So I think Baylor proved to me that I could. I remember the night I was in a fraternity called KOT, and I remember the night they came in. And I'm probably divulging a secret, but that's okay. There's nothing they can do to me. They come in the first time, they tell you didn't make it. And I remember going through my head just thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't come. Maybe this isn't a good fit for me. Maybe I need to go back home. And then they come in about 2 minutes later and say, we're just kidding, get dressed. I remember that feeling of finding a connectivity, a group to connect with, like it was yesterday. It was almost a validation that taking a risk and going somewhere that a lot of people in South Carolina hadn't heard of was worth it. And now, when people ask, where did you go to school? The first question back home is, why'd you go that far away? But the more people get to know Baylor, the less people ask, Why? It just has there were a bunch of kids from Spartanburg that I won't say talked into going to Baylor, but starting with my two younger sisters. They both went to Baylor after me, and then a plethora of young people from my church and my community. Once you find out about it, you want to see your own kids and grandkids in an environment like this.
And we're done.